Mark chapter 4. If you have your Bibles, go there. If not, I'll put it on the screen. This is where we're going to be all night, is in Mark chapter 4. And it says, that day when evening came, he, being Jesus, said to his disciples, let us go over to the other side. And leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. And then it goes on to say that a furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. And then it says Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. Don't you love that when you're going through some areas of your life where it's like, what in the world's going on? And then here they're going on it, and Jesus is sleeping on a cushion. That's kind of what I like to do after I preach. But Jesus is sleeping on a cushion. It says the disciples woke him and said to him, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? And he got up, he rebuked the wind, and he said to the waves, Quiet, be still. And then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. But then it goes on to say, he said to his disciples, Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? They were terrified, and they asked each other, Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. So we see that Jesus just is preaching. He gets in the boat. He says, we're going to go to the other side. And then all this chaos breaks out. So I want you to ask yourself, in life, do you have a place where you're at right now, you know you're supposed to go, quote unquote, to the other side, and then all of a sudden, somewhere along the lines, chaos breaks out? I don't know about you, but I have it on a consistent basis. It could be, all of us deal with it relationally. It could be career. It could be dreams. Could be dealing with kids. We're on our way going to the other side, and all of a sudden storms break out. But what do we do in the middle of those storms? A lot of people will cower down, but I hope what we see in this is that in the middle of the storm, we stand and we don't flinch. And so I find it interesting is when Jesus says, hey, we're going to go to the other side, he doesn't tell them why. He doesn't tell them anything. Look, he just says, let us go over to the other side. He doesn't give them a whole rationale. He doesn't give them directions more than that. He doesn't say much of anything. What does he say? He says, we're going to go to the other side. That's all he says. We're going to go to the other side. And so Jesus gave them a destination. He gives them no explanation of what's going on. You ever feel like, especially in your faith walk, Jesus will tell you something and he tells you like kind of where you're going, but there's nothing else how to get there. There's no explanation. You ever feel that way? I feel that way all the time. And so he just says, let us go. Doesn't tell them anything else because God always reveals the purpose before he reveals the process to us. So we have to understand that God will show you the end, but he doesn't always show you how you're going to get there. He'll show you the purpose of your life, but he doesn't show you the process on how to get there. And that's where frustration happens. See, I want you to think about all the things that start well. I want you to think about maybe a relationship you're in that starts really well, or maybe a business that you're in that starts really well, or a ministry that you're in that starts really well, or when you have kids and it starts really well. But the challenge isn't in the beginning because there's excitement. The challenge is in the middle when you're already on the way. You ever notice that? Like at the beginning, it's exciting. You know it's going to be at the end. That looks really good. But it's on the way there. The chaos erupts. And it's in the middle that we find the storm. And it's in the middle that things start to challenge us. And we have to realize that in the middle of this, I'm going to be steady and I'm not going to flinch. But we see in this that the disciples don't do that. The disciples, they're flinching all over the place. But here is what I hope that we see. And I want you to dig down deep, and I want you to ask yourself, when you had moments with God where you understood who he was it in the good times that you really understood who God was, or was it in the rough times that you really understood who God was? And if we're honest with ourselves, you learn things about God in the storm that you'll never learn anywhere else. You learn about God, you learn about yourself, you learn about obedience, you learn about discipline. Some of these things can only be learned in the middle of a life storm. You know what I mean by that. And so when things are going good, you don't always look to God for the answers. But when things are not so good, you come in a line and you start to learn things that really help. Because here's the thing that we have to understand. The storm is part of God's process for you and I. Isn't that exciting? Doesn't this bring you so much joy? Like, oh, yes, the storm is part of it. But here's the thing. we can learn things from reading books. We can learn things from podcasting. I don't know about you. I learn a lot of things from Joe Rogan. Probably not a lot of things that I should learn, but I learned a lot of things from Joe Rogan. I on Saturday mornings, one of my favorite things to do is I turn on and the new Tim Dillon show comes out. I learned a lot of things about Tim Dillon. I know some people looking like, huh? Like, don't worry, you don't need to look up who Tim Dillon is, but I laugh for an hour and a half straight. I can't help it. And so I listen to these, so I learn things from podcasts. If you think about it, I learn things from people. I learn things from other preachers. But let's be honest, you don't really pay attention and learn until it's you going through it. And then you learn. And then it's a first-hand thing. And then that's the thing that sticks with you. Because the thing is, storms have a way of waking us up to who God really is. And that's what we're going to look at. I want you to know, like, if is anyone in the room that maybe you're dealing with something tonight, you got some kind of storm going on. Here's the beautiful things about storms. Like, storms happen to everybody. They happen to Republicans. They happen to Democrats. They happen to the rich. They happen to the poor. They happen to people who are married. They happen to people who are single. They happen to the people who are saved and know Jesus. They happen to people who are far from Jesus. Storms happen to every single one of us, and nobody can escape them. It's such a beautiful promise. We know Jesus says in John 16:33 that in this life you will have trials and troubles, but he says, take heart, I've overcome the world. So none of us can escape it. All of us deal with it, but it's how we deal with it when we're in the middle of it that matters. And so that's what I want to get at, because I want you to know there's some people, I believe this word is not only, I believe it's for me more than anyone else in the room. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I believe that it's also for a lot of people that are here. And I also believe it's for our church that, you see, storms are built into God's plan for getting you to the other side of where you're supposed to be. They're built in, and we're gonna see why. So when we're in the middle of a storm, what's the first thing we try to do? What's the first thing you try to do? You try to fix it, right? So, but here's the problem. That's the first mistake, is trying to fix it, because the storm is not yours to fix when God allows you to go through it. The disciples' storm on the lake was not theirs to fix. It was theirs to survive, because there was something that God wanted to teach them in the middle of it. So I want to talk to the men here for a moment. When you're going through something, most men, I mean, unless you're, I don't know, like unless you're maybe anyway, maybe I hope everyone in the room is this way. So most men, they want to fix things. When things go bad, they want to fix it. I don't know about you, but like when Faith tells me this is a problem about being in a relationship, as I've learned that sometimes the ladies just want to talk. They just want to tell you what's going on. But my brain automatically goes to, she's mid-sentence and I've already got the solution. And then I start to bring up the solution, and then you just get smacked a little bit. You know, not maybe physically, but with the words. You know, men like to fix things. So we like to fix things. We like projects. We like to think big and build things. Maybe not physically build things, but we dream of ideas, and we're into creating something that we can be proud of. We're into taking territory. That's why every man, if this is true, if you're a man and a lady, if you're saying, what are you thinking about? The answer could be nothing. And yes, the answer could be the Roman Empire, because those are two things that men always think about. It's kind of a joke, but it's true, because men like conquest. Men like fixing things. Men like taking territory. And when a storm comes up, we want to conquer that sucker right here, right now. And then the ladies, like so the ladies are relational fixers, right? The ladies want to fix their husbands. If you're married, and if you know the lady wants to fix their husband, even though there's nothing to fix, they still want to fix it. And then they want to fix their children. They want to fix their families. They like to fix relationally. So men like to fix problems. Ladies like to fix relationally. But here's the thing. Men and women both lose confidence in life when they're not able to do that. And here comes the storm. Storms exist that nobody can fix. There are some storms you might be going through that you cannot fix them. Don't even try. And people who continue to try to fix it, they get discouraged. Sometimes you can be in the middle, and like I gotta just be honest with you, since like there's been times in ministry that I've wondered, God, why this? Or why is things happening like this? Or why did you put me in this situation? And if I try to fix it, I get frustrated. I end up like just crawling to a corner and praying and falling asleep. It's kind of like one of those things. Or you could say maybe God wants to speak something through that. And so in the middle of this storm, there was a reason that this storm came up. The reason that this storm came up, and why people are like, well, what's the big deal? Why the storm? Because it says that when they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. Now it's like, I'm not going to ask you who the Gerasenes were, but they were Gentiles. They weren't Jewish people that Jesus was ministering to. This was the first time Jesus crosses the lake, and he's going to people that never heard the gospel before, and he's going to them, and a storm happens up right in the middle of it. You see, there's the crossing of the boat symbolizes some things, because the message was going from the Jews to the Gentiles. It's a symbol of the message going from Jerusalem to Rome and to the ends of the earth. It's a symbol of God's promise here was rested only with the Israelis at the time. And this is the moment that we see the first time that it goes from Israel to the nations. I'm going to get off that real quick. And then we see that it's the first time that there's this crossing over, that there's this time where it's really the beginning of the old covenant, that God is closing the door and he's opening up to something new. And that's what we see here. Because in this moment, I want you to see that in the story, the boat represents the church. The boat represents you and I. And the boat is the church or us, and it's on the sea that's the world. And we're traveling through this life, and we're going to have storms that come up along the way if we're faithful to Jesus. And so I want you to see that we aren't supposed to function outside of the world, but inside of it. And inside of it comes storms and issues. Now, wouldn't you love if you could pick your storm that you battle? Wouldn't you love it if you could be like, God, I'll take this one, but I'm not going to pick that one. Nobody chooses the things they go through. Like, I don't know anybody who says, oh God, please let me battle the storm of cancer. I would love to go through that. I don't know anybody who does that. Nobody says, I want to battle the storm of betrayal, or I want to battle the storm of divorce. I want to battle the storm of tragedy, or God, I just want my family to collapse. Please give me that storm. Or God, I just want to start a business and go bankrupt. Please give me that one. Nobody chooses the storms they go through. But see, we don't pick them, but we encounter them. And so I want to get into this thing. I want to ask you, in the middle of the storm, we have to resist the ability to try to fix it. Because sometimes we don't have the answer, and it forces us to rely on Jesus and his answer. The most powerful place you can be in the middle of a storm sometimes is literally, maybe physically, but especially figuratively, when we're on our knees asking Jesus to help us. It's in the middle of that the power comes, because it forces the issue of control in our life. And the control aspect, we do really well when we put the control in the hands of Jesus. Because we see that in John 1, that God speaks and he says that he is the light of the world. We talked about this last week. He's the one that came out and he ushers his light into darkness. He's the one that all things were created through. And if we put our control in his hands, it makes it a lot easier. But the problem is we just like to control it. Now, here's another thing I found interesting about this. Is this helping anybody? I hope it is. It's helping me. If not, this is what I want you to see this. That the enemy doesn't attack when you're doing really well. He comes in and God allows the storm to happen when the most likely time the storm happens is when we're tired. Like, if you first get up in the morning, you can handle things. But by the end of the day, especially if you're tired, maybe you're walking all day, maybe you haven't eaten anything, maybe your kids have been daddy for 7 hours in a row, and you're going to punch the next kid who says it. Like maybe it's in those moments where we're easy to snap. But the big storms in life often come when we're tired. I want you to see this. This is what we see. It says that day when evening came, he said to the disciples, let's go in to the other boat and go across. And then we see later on in Mark 4:38, it says that Jesus was in the stern sleeping on a cushion. I want to ask you a question. Peter's the one that freaks out, and the disciples freak out, and they say, teacher, don't you care we're going to drown? If Jesus was tired, and he's the Son of God, I would really say I bet the disciples are just as tired. Like, they've been with him all day. They've been ministering with him all day. They've been going where he went. And if the Son of God has to sit down on a pillow and go to sleep, I'm sure Peter wanted to do the same thing. Like, I'm sure he was ready for it. He was ready for any pillow he could find other than one of those weird pregnancy pillows that look like a big S. I hate those things. We're dealing with one right now. I cannot wait till the baby comes and I can throw that thing in the garbage. When Malika was born, it was the first thing I threw in the garbage was that stupid pregnancy pillow. And so so Jesus is ready for any pillow besides that one. And you can imagine Peter, he's just working all day. And he's, if you know anything about Jesus was speaking to a crowd and he's speaking, but the real work is not the guy speaking. It's the guy that's dealing with the crowd. It's just like I'm telling you, when you're in a big crowd, the easy part is speaking. The hard part is dealing with all the people. And so you can imagine Peter is just exhausted. And it's in this moment that the storm comes up. It's in this moment that the storm raises its head, because the devil wants you exhausted. He doesn't want you rested. He wants you exhausted, not fresh, not energized, burned out, emotionally done, and then the storm hits. You ever notice that? Anyone ever felt a burnout before? You're just like done. And you make really stupid, rash decisions in the middle of the burnout. When you're burnt out, you are ready to burn everything on fire with you, right? And so you make decisions or you say things that are just, they might not be so good. I mean, of course, I never do that. I never do that, especially with faith. I'd never get burnt out and say bad things because I'm perfect. But I know some of you might, but that never happened to me this morning. And so it's like in the middle of that, like when you're burnt out, you tend to it's just like a dagger's come out of your mouth. Why? Because in the middle of the storm, it doesn't affect you until you're tired. There's some people in the room, you feel burnt out, emotionally just done with situations, and in the middle of something, and in how do we handle this? How do we handle it? And then we notice in this verse that there's perspective issues, because the disciples are panicking. Like, they have got Jesus in the boat, the one who was born of a virgin, the one who does all the miracles, the one who's fully God, fully man. The Messiah is in the boat, and they think they're going to die. What kind of dummy do you have to be in the boat with Jesus and think you're going to die? Yet we do that every day because Jesus is with us, and we think these things are going to take us out. But it's important to understand that the storm is not going to kill you. And sometimes you have to realize that you didn't cause the storm. You didn't cause the storm. When you go through a storm, I'm surprised the disciples didn't say, we're the ones that caused the storm, because we like to bring it on ourselves. And some storms we do bring on ourselves, but there are some things that are not brought upon ourselves. And so I want you to realize that through this, we can learn what the disciples are about to learn. So then the fun thing happens, because, where they're in the middle of the storm, and then Jesus, they freak out on, we're gonna die. We're gonna die. We're gonna die. We're done. Jesus, we're screwed. It's never gonna happen. Then he says to them, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? So he rebukes the disciples. It's like, dude, the storm is about to take us out. You're sleeping. And he gets up, he tells the winds and the wave to stop, and then he immediately turns to the disciples, and he said, what's wrong with you? Why are you afraid? You don't have any faith? What's this all about? It's the weirdest thing ever. And so I've been thinking about this week. Why would Jesus rebuke the disciples and get all up on them because they had no faith? Because they had enough faith to wake him up, but Jesus wasn't saying that. He was saying, why are you afraid? Where'd your faith go? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, Jesus, I knew I couldn't do it, so I woke you up. But that wasn't the right answer. So why did Jesus rebuke the disciples? And if we get this, it's going to help us. The first thing is because they forgot Christ's presence. They forgot his presence. We know that they woke him up because we have to understand that his silence was not his absence. Sometimes when we're going through storms, you have to realize if God is silent, it does not mean that he's absent. And we see promises in Hebrews 13:5. Jesus says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And then in Isaiah 43:2, he says that when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. John 16:33, you're going to have trials and troubles, but take heart. I've overcome the world. I live in you. They forgot his presence. The second thing is they forgot their responsibility. They forgot their responsibility because he says to them, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? You see, they're leading, they're taking charge. And in the middle of this, Jesus wanted them to realize who they were. He wanted them to realize that they can stand firm because just a few chapters earlier, he gave them the the power to speak and things to happen. And they went out, and we see that they healed the sick, and demons were cast out, and they had authority. At this point, Jesus already gave them authority, and they forgot their responsibility. And sometimes I'm going back to the men. I'm sorry to beat you guys up a little bit. I'm not really, but this is spoken to me, so I'm giving it to you. It's the same thing that Apostle Paul writes. He says this. He says, be on alert, stand firm in the faith. And then I love how he slides this in there. Act like men and be strong. That's literally what he says. He said, now, I don't know how many people actually hear this talked about in church, but at MJF, you never know what you're going to get. And so who knows what's happening next week. But sooner or later, I'll get myself in trouble. But in here, he says, stand firm in the faith. And Apostle Paul literally says, act like men. That hit me this week. Because as a man, when we sit there, like, let's just be honest. When no one's around, men, maybe I'm the only one. Maybe I have too much estrogen running through my body. I don't know. But you ever sit there and you ever have a pity party for yourself? Like you're in the truck. I just have everything, and I do everything, and this and that, and I don't know what to do. And it's always like I don't know what to do. And it's like, and I'm just like, and all of a sudden, Apostle Paul says, "Hey, be on alert, stand firm in the faith." Then he says, "Act like men, be strong." You know, this is, I believe, if there's one verse that I could say is wrong with America, I would speak this verse over America, and that is, men, act like men, stand firm in the faith. Because a lot of us don't, and I don't do it all the time, but I believe that what honors God as a man is not how much money you make. It's not anything other than standing firm in the faith. When storms come our way, men, there's something that we're supposed to be the ones that stand firm in the middle of the storm. I want to get to the point, and I told Faith, this is my number one prayer, that over the next 6 months, I become so firm and so manly that my wife and daughter don't freak out unless they see me freak out. Because, men, we're supposed to be the rock that holds it together. Of course, Jesus is the rock, but we're supposed to be the ones that hold it together. And the reason that we've gotten so, as men, so just all over the place is because we've lost who we are. And as men, we're supposed to stand firm in the faith. I don't know about this, but if I was speaking this right now, Faith would be jumping up and down saying amen. I would think all the ladies would agree, and they would say, oh yes, please do that. Please act like men, because that's what we're supposed to do. And that's what I believe Jesus is saying to his disciples. Why are you so afraid? Be who you're supposed to be. And then the last thing is the disciples, they forget their authority. Jesus expected them to handle the storm. He didn't expect them to run around and complain, oh, I don't know what to do. Oh, I'm so scared. He expected them to stand up and do it. So I want you to think about this. There are going to be some things that come along the way. I'll just be honest with you. So I've thought about ministry. Like for me, like ministry is a big thing, and kind of big dreams for the city, and big dreams for stuff overseas. And sometimes I get a little bit in a funk, right? And so I can sit there and then I start to have this inside voice play a little bit. And when this inside voice plays, I know it's not good, but I just get this whole, I like to make fun of it. So that's why I bring in my hillbilly accent, but it's kind of like, you just sit there and you think, and you're like, all of a sudden you start to listen to the voice. Oh, well, maybe it's better if I just quit. Maybe it's better if I just be nice. Maybe it's better if I just stay down and be quiet. You know what God is saying to us as men? No, and us as people of God. No, it's not better to just bow down. Sometimes if we're thinking about the culture that we live in, it's storm after storm after storm. I want you to think about this. Even Christianity, there's about 2 or 3 major things going on, even in Christianity right now. It is just like bam, bam, bam. And we could get so sidetracked with it and so afraid to speak out and so afraid to make people upset. But sooner or later, we've got to stand firm for something. And so in the middle of the storm, what faith does is it causes you to not flinch, and it causes you to stand firm and to look the storm right in the eyes and to come at it and say, I may not have the answers. I may not know how this is going to work out, but I know Jesus lives in me. And because of that, I'm going to stand firm and speak goodness over the storm. I'm going to speak faith over the storm. I'm going to speak faith over my family. I'm going to speak faith over the ministry. I'm going to speak faith over my life. I'm going to speak faith over our career, over the business. I'm going to let something rise up in me, the Jesus living in me, and the authority with that, and stand firm and speak to it. That's what we're supposed to do in the middle of the storm. And then the storm, when you go through, this is the most beautiful part of it. The storm always reveals Jesus to us. Because at the very end of the story, we see this. This is in Luke 8. It's the same. It's still a version of the story, but I like how they put it. It says, Jesus, where is your faith? He asked the disciples. Then it says, in fear and amazement, they ask one another, who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him. After the storm, they looked in fear and amazement. When you go through a storm, when you go through something, what you have to realize is it will show you more of who Jesus is. Because when Jesus pulls you out of something, when Jesus walks you through something, when Jesus is hand in hand and you conquer territory with Jesus, or you see a healing happen, or your family gets restored, or the things you've been believing God for happen, it shows you more about who Jesus is. They said, who is this? This is the problem. And I'm gonna go off I'm probably gonna end it right there on online, because I probably don't want to say this online. Maybe I do. I don't know. We'll see. And so the problem is we've made church about so much other than trusting Jesus in the storm. We've made church about how much money you give. You know, it's to take an offering. I'm not going to take one, because if you want to give, great. If not, I don't care. It's just whatever. And so it's like, we make church about money, and we make church about, the mighty man of God, or we make church about, you have to do this or do that. We made church about buildings, and we've made church about just different tiers of BS, really. It's just nonsense. But what this life is about is discovering more of who Jesus is. It's about becoming more and more like him. Yes, it's important that we give, and yes, it's important that we serve, and yes, it's important that these things happen. But what's not important is about building ourselves up. It's about discovering Jesus and becoming more and more like him. And in the middle of the storm, if we embrace it, God will speak and direct and show us more of who Jesus is. So I don't know about you, but I would rather, at the end of this day, at the end of this life, I would rather know who Jesus is than have all of this stuff that doesn't matter. So I want you to strip away everything that you've dealt with. I want you to strip away everything that all the junk we've learned, and come back to Jesus. And as we walk through the storms that come up in life, we trust in the one who allows the storms to happen, because he's never going to leave us. He's never going to forsake us. And that is what it's about. I want to pray for you right now. Jesus, I thank you for who you are. I thank you that in the middle of the craziness of life, that you are the one who holds it all together. And so, Jesus, we just ask that as storms arise, as things come up, we ask that you would walk us through it, and that we would realize that we have authority in the middle of the storm because you live big inside of us. So, Jesus, we ask you to help us to see more of you. Not so that we can make a name for ourselves, or not so that we can build an empire for ourselves, not so we can build a mini kingdom, or not so we can do anything for us, but because we want to become more like you, Jesus. So we love you, Jesus, and we thank you for who you are. In your name we pray. Amen. So a couple of things coming up in the church. First off, if you need prayer afterwards, I'll be available. Kevin will be available if you need prayer for anything. But a couple of things to note. Next week is July 4th weekend, so we're still going to do church on Sunday night, and we're going to do a cookout.